All right, so shalom and welcome. This is Rabbi Patrick Bollier, and I'm very excited to be taking you through this source sheet on conversion to Judaism. So you have a copy here in the unit, and this is also available on the website Sefaria, which is a really great website. I highly encourage you to check it out. I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about my story. So I converted to Judaism in my early 20s. I was raised in a non-religious, non-Jewish household. And my sort of connection to Judaism was really connected to maturing as an adult. When you're in your early 20s, you're still trying to figure some stuff out and you need to find some core values to connect to. And that's what it was about for me. And now that I'm older, so I'm 40 years old now, and have a child and have a wife, these questions of your values, what matters to you, have taken on a whole new meaning, as well as the life cycle and holiday celebrations, which aren't just about, a congregational setting or doing something with my friends like a Passover Seder, but having a family to do those things with. So that's a little bit about me. Obviously, I'm the director, founder of Darshan Yeshiva, and getting to work on projects like this where I get to help people come to Judaism if that is their path, is certainly a very meaningful thing to me. So in this next part, some frequently asked questions, and certainly there are a lot of them. So why do people convert to Judaism? A lot of reasons, and you may have your own. Some people convert because it's a spiritual idea. They're looking for something spiritually, and they find it in Judaism. For other people, there's a community component. So they like the Jewish peoplehood. They like the celebrations, the holidays, history, language, culture. They find a home in that. So Judaism is less about converting and more about being adopted. There are also other elements as well. Some people like the approach to the study of text and debate and argument. Maybe we argue a little too much sometimes, but some people are really, connected to that. For some people, converting to Judaism is about the family they're joining. So they are marrying a Jewish person. Their sense of community isn't about a synagogue or some group online or something like that, but it's about the people that they spend these holidays with and these celebrations with. As those people are inviting them to be part of their family, so too are they inviting them to be part of their tribe, if you will. So why don't Jews proselytize, right? Like, why aren't we knocking on doors and things like that? For the simple reason that Jews have been historically marginalized. It was dangerous to not only be Jewish, but then to suggest someone would convert to Judaism. So some people misinterpret a idea that was in history, a practice that was in history of turning away prospective converts. It has nothing to do with how serious a person is. It has nothing to do with not wanting people to be part of the Jewish peoplehood. It is absolutely nothing like that. It was because of infiltration by Roman soldiers. And so if you're a marginalized people, you would ask, well, why would you want to be part of us, knowing how difficult it is for us? It's a little different now. Yes, we face anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, right now that's growing. But at the same time, it's a very different place than we were, say, 2,000 years ago. But still, that lingers with a culture, and so proselytizing is not something that we typically do. Although you could say a website like this, we do make Judaism accessible to people, but we're not trying to convert the world. How long does the process take? So the process takes usually about a year in most Jewish communities. When you get into the Orthodox world, it can take 2 or 3 years. Our program takes 10 months, sometimes a little less. So why is that? Judaism is very much connected again to the life cycle and the holidays. So the rabbis kind of had this idea that maybe you would take a year to convert to Judaism because you'd want to experience all the holidays and investing yourself in that Jewish calendar. Some people say that's great. Other people say you need to take more time. Some people say, well, why even bother with going through all of that, especially when other religions will allow you to join them in relatively no time. But generally speaking, we say 10 months. That's about a year. Some people don't need as much time to learn things. Some people need a little more. It's very much a personal journey. And what does that journey involve? What does it take to become Jewish? So to become Jewish, you are being asked really to give up other religious practices. So, for example, you could certainly go to a Christmas party. That's fine. You're going with your coworkers, you're going to visit your family, that's fine. You're going to their celebration, but it is understood that it is not your celebration. Just as they could come to your Hanukkah party or your Passover Seder, understanding that it's not their Passover Seder. It's not their Hanukkah party. And that's really what it's about. It's about joining a peoplehood, and that peoplehood has certain boundaries. And really it is about understanding that you are a part of this peoplehood now. You are not giving up your ancestry. You can still be fully Irish, still fully African American, still fully anything, right? You can be anything and be Jewish, right? You can be any race, you can be any culture, you can be from any nation. Jewish ultimately is a religious connection. And we know that even with this Jewish peoplehood concept, because it's something you can convert to, right? It is something that you can join. There are not as many different kinds of cultures that you can join by virtue of your interest in them. So what is asked of you is that you really have a kinship with that group, with our group, the Jewish people, and celebrate and practice Judaism in that way. And that what you are giving up is those practices of other peoplehoods. Do you have to know, speak, or be fluent in Hebrew? Absolutely not. Or as they say in Hebrew, lo. No, you do not have to have great Hebrew. Hebrew is the Lashon HaKodesh, so it is the holy language. So it is worth knowing, right? There are prayers you need to know that are in Hebrew. And so learning those, even if it's with phonetic spelling, what we call transliteration, is an excellent way to do that. I encourage people to get some sort of basic knowledge so that you can look at Jewish text and you can break it apart a little bit. Anytime you rely upon a translator, you're relying upon their values, their biases, prejudices, all of these other things. So if you have a little bit of Hebrew knowledge, that can help. So you do all of this learning, and eventually you get to the end of a conversion. So what does that involve? So the first thing you're going to have is what's called a beit din. Beit din, unfortunately, translates to house of judgment. But you could not get any further from judgment. It's a conversation. Usually happens with 3 rabbis, or it can be some combination of both. So it could be the sponsoring rabbi. It could be maybe a cantor and then an educated lay Jew. It could be 2 rabbis and maybe an educated lay person. So the combination of those things, it really just depends on kind of how you and your mentor work through that. Would you have the Beit Din, and they ask questions like, what's your favorite Jewish holiday? Is there someone from a Jewish text that is meaningful to you? Do you like any sort of Jewish arts, culture type things, cooking, any traditions that are meaningful to you? You choose a Hebrew name, so in choosing your Hebrew name, why did you choose that name? Why is that meaningful to you? Things like that. So very personal. It is not a quiz. It's none of those types of things. But that's the first part. The next thing you have to consider is if you are a cisgender male, is circumcision. So there's a couple of things here. So one is actually becoming circumcised. The other is if you are circumcised, there is a ritual letting of blood called hatafat dambrit, or sometimes people will shorten it and just say dambrit. And so you need to speak with your mentor about what all that involves, if that applies to you. The next thing is mikvah. So that is the ritual bath. And there are prayers that are said along with the ritual bath. And there's a little bit of a process that you go through before that. So you shower, you make sure you don't have any nail polish on, no belly button rings or earrings or anything like that. Make sure you don't have any conditioner in your hair, anything like like that. You want to be in as raw of a state as possible. So you go to the mikveh, you shower, you then put yourself in the actual mikveh water, and there is either an attendant of some kind or there's a partition that prevents people from seeing you, and you go through the dunking that way. It is where Christians got the idea of baptism, and depending on the layout of the mikveh, you will sort of utilize the mikveh in a different way. So speak with your mentor about what the mikveh looks like and sort of what the procedure is there, because they're all shaped a little bit different. Some people don't use a mikveh that is housed, let's say, in a synagogue or in a community. They will use a mikveh that is actually some other natural living waters. So you can use an ocean as a mikveh, for example. It has to be living, running water. But again, speak with your mentor about sort of the specifics on what that looks like. Of course, the question of acceptance. What is legitimate? People get concerned about sort of those things. So will you be accepted as a Jew if you convert with insert rabbi or movement? What I tell people about this question of acceptance or legitimacy is, for whom would you like to appear legitimate? For whom would you like to be, or by whom would you like to be accepted? So it is a community question. If you would like to be part of an Orthodox Jewish community, you need to move to that community, buy a house, rent an apartment, whatever. You need to go to that synagogue. You need to meet with that rabbi, and you need to be part of that community. There is no sort of backdoor, greater insurance policy thing that will help you to be accepted in that community. You have to, if you want to be part of that community, you have to join that community. Outside of the United States, that is also true often with even more liberal forms of Judaism. There is very much an attitude of, if you want to be part of us, you have to be with us. So you need to email the rabbi, and you need to get connected with that local community. Having said that, if that is not what you are looking for, then the next question you have to ask yourself is, do these movements of any kind have meaning to me? Do I want to think of myself as a conservative Jew? Do I want to think of myself as a Reconstructionist Jew? Are those things meaningful to me? And generally speaking, throughout the different movements of sort of non-Orthodox Judaism, especially in the United States, there is an acceptance of all peoples in all places. There are some halakhic understandings that you have to think about. So in conservative Judaism, you're going to have a much more traditional approach to what is a beit din, what is a mikveh, was hatafat dam brit done, or is the person circumcised, things like that. So those more traditional communities are going to think in more traditional ways. Having said that, again, in the United States, I do not hear any stories of people converting with a Reform rabbi and becoming part of a conservative synagogue and there being any real issues. Again, these halakhic things you have to figure out. But in terms of denomination, in terms of movement, in terms of who is a rabbi and who is not, those types of differentiations in the United States do not mean what they used to mean 20, 30, 40, 100 years ago. Right? We are much more pluralistic than we have ever been. We're a lot more open and accepting of each other. And some of the, I would call it panic that you find online of, well, I need to convert conservative because then everyone has to accept me. Or, well, the community in my area is Reform, but I'm more Reconstructionist. So what do I do? That stuff, that is not a thing. It's not a thing. And I hate that people go online and they see that stuff, and it causes them more emotional strife than it needs to. So what about my parents, partners, spouse, children, and children to be? Okay, so all different parts here. So obviously there's family and friends and people that you want to be part of this process with you in some way. You want them to know what you're doing. It's an important thing to you. And I really look to our friends in the LGBTQ plus community on this when it comes to what it means to convert to Judaism, that there is a kind of outing process or like a coming out of a spiritual identity. So I think that there are some things there that you have to ask yourself, who is safe, who is not. You might have some negative reactions, if you come from, let's say, a family that is deeply religious in one way. Some families I've found, even if you convert to a different religion, if your family is religious, they will actually appreciate that you're just doing something. So I've seen this happen before, where children who were raised by Christian parents, let's say, the kid, an adult kid, converts to Judaism, and the parents take an attitude of like, well, you found something. That's great. We support that. Maybe it's not what we did, but you're doing something. I had one person tell me that in spite of converting to Judaism, some of the things that she did with raising her children and all of that, she said were more Catholic than her sort of non-practicing Catholic sibling. So you never know. With a partner or a spouse, if you are building a life together, this is going to matter because being Jewish is going to take over a huge identity in the home. So what we do or don't eat on Passover affects what your partner eats on Passover, right? Different types of food ways that we have at different times, like maybe making latkes at Hanukkah or eating Hamantash cookies on Purim. And that's just one sort of silly example, but things like Shabbat are probably more important. What do you do or don't do on Shabbat? And what are you asking of your partner? They have to consent. They have to decide, is this something that they are unwilling to participate in? And you have to have a conversation with them and let them know this is what you're up to. And those things really matter. In terms of children to be, this is the question that actually goes up earlier of what is accepted. This is particularly true of women, right? Because if you've converted to Judaism and then you have a child within halakha, within Jewish law, your child is Jewish. Doesn't matter if you converted. Your child is Jewish, even if you yourself converted. If you're a male and you're converting and you have a female partner, in terms of that stuff, if she's, not interested in converting to Judaism, okay, certain movements in Judaism will be sort of more able to help you and help your kids, and others will not. So those are things you kind of have to take into account, and you have to talk to your mentor about whatever the repercussions of that might be. But let's say you already have children and you're converting to Judaism. Is the whole household converting to Judaism? Are the kids now going to participate in these things? How do you explain to children this is what your parents are doing, and here's how that affects you? You are the parent. You are the one who knows how to talk to your child, and I don't. But what I think is important is to provide an open conversation. I think it's to include children in age-appropriate activities and teach those beliefs and show those practices. Kids are very tactile. Kids like, touching things, messing with things, playing with things. So maybe you don't need a big theological conversation with your child, but maybe it's a book, like a children's book that gets read. Maybe it's lighting a menorah. Maybe it's playing a game of some kind. Things like that. I wouldn't just toss a kid into a synagogue and see what happens, but maybe you're a family that's like that. So that's really on a family basis. There is the idea of, are you asking children to give up Santa, to give up Easter, things like that? And that can be sad for children if you're asking them to give that stuff up. Children can convert to Judaism. So let's say you're converting and so are the kids. The kids at age 13 have the right to reject Judaism and live their own life. And Jewishly, that is considered perfectly acceptable because they were a minor when they converted. I don't really know of any situations where this has happened. I have never been personally confronted with it, but I know families who have adopted children, and those children are not Jewish who they adopt, and they are adopted into these Jewish homes, and the kids participate in Jewish activities and all of that, but they themselves never have any interest in becoming Jewish, even though they are part of Jewish families for the rest of their life. So these are all complicated family things that really you have to do on a case-by-case basis. So, Israel, Aliyah, and anti-Semitism. So, Darshan Yeshiva does not work with people for the expressed purpose of making Aliyah, which is Jewish immigration to the state of Israel. We do not do that because the laws in Israel change all the time, and we cannot guarantee that if we take a student in January, let's say, to convert, that by October or November, Knesset hasn't changed the rules, or that the Ministry of the Interior or Jewish Identity hasn't changed the rules. So that's not something we participate in, and that's for everyone's benefit. In terms of anti-Semitism, yes, you will become part of a peoplehood that in some places is marginalized. And so you have to ask yourself how you're going to handle that. My own approach to anti-Semitism is to recognize that there are bad ideas in the world, and the only way to counter bad ideas is with good ideas. So I try personally to counter anti-Semitism with, and I mean this in a joking term, pro-Semitism. Being Jewish in public, that's an important idea to me. So now let's talk about the 3 B's of religion: belonging, believing, behaving. You can do those in any order you want. They're in a slightly different order in your program that is called First Steps. So I just kind of moved it around a little bit and wanted to give you some text here. But this is specifically about what it means within a conversion context. All right, so the First Steps program is designed for everybody. This is taking those ideas and making them more applicable to conversion. So let's try this out. So this is the book of Ruth. So to give you a little bit of preface, Ruth is a non-Jew who married into a Jewish family. Her husband and all of her husband's brothers have died. So the only person that's left is her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naomi encourages her to leave and just go be a Moabite with her family because Naomi has nothing to offer her in terms of, family and all of that. And Ruth says, "Do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God." Which is a very beautiful, beautiful line. I've heard this in weddings, actually, before, Jewish weddings. So let's think about this for a minute. So this Moabite woman didn't convert to Judaism. She's married into this Jewish family. You have to understand that at the time, in terms of Jewish identity, things looked a little different than they do now, in terms of marriage and Jews and non-Jews marrying, stuff like that. But Ruth is going to go with Naomi to sort of the next place that they are going to live to try to eke out some kind of life for themselves amidst tragedy. And what Ruth says is, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. And what's important about this line is to think about what the author is putting into Ruth's mouth in terms of order of importance. What is the most important thing to Ruth right now? And she goes in this kind of descending order. So she says, don't turn me away, right? That's part 1. Don't turn me away. In a sense, Naomi has a right to turn her away. She says, I have nothing to offer you, right? Why would you go with me, right? You're better off somewhere else. And so Ruth's comment to this is, wherever you go, I will go. So wherever you go, I will go, meaning that her fate is to be tied with the future of the Jewish people. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge, meaning that wherever Naomi, as her, as her Jewish, family is, that is where she's going to be. She's not going to cut herself off from the Jewish people. And then she goes further to say, your people shall be my people. So in other words, I will be a Jew. And then she says, and your God, my God. So she is going to fully invest herself religiously in the identity of the Jewish people. So first of all, don't turn me away. And whatever the future looks like, I will be part of that future. And whatever the present looks like, I'll be part of that present. Your people will be my people, meaning I will be a Jew, and I will practice according to the religion of this people. So it isn't a deeply theological idea. Ruth doesn't say, but I believe in the God of the people of Israel, and I'm going to make that the primacy of my Jewish identity. And from there, I am led to being with you. She says, no, I'm going to be with you, and I'm going to be part of the future of the Jewish people, and I'm going to follow those religious practices. So this belonging is what matters. It is very hard to be Jewish by yourself. It is very hard to be Jewish without others around you. So now we're going to move into the Talmud. So this is the extra-canonical text of Judaism. And there's a little bit of a hypothetical scenario that's set up here as far as what the conversion process looks like. So the sages taught, with regard to a potential convert who comes to a rabbinical court, so this is a Beit Din, in order to convert. At the present time, when the Jews are in exile, the judges of the court say to them. Okay, so what does all of that mean? So this is being written in a time when the Jewish people do not have the modern state of Israel. And being in exile is both a physical activity and it's a spiritual activity, meaning that the Jewish people are not in a fully settled place. The Jewish people are somewhere else. And that we are unable to live out Jewish lives with all of the freedoms and also responsibilities that we have had in the past. So the sages want to set that up, that at the present time the Jews are in exile. We can still have a rabbinical court, though. So in that context, though, of not having the state of Israel, or in this case, having a kingdom of Israel, let's say, having the Messianic era, having, a time where we live in Israel under the Messiah, maybe. With regard to where we are at this present moment, what do we do with someone who wants to convert? So the court is to ask, the Beit Din is to ask this question, or this series of questions. What did you see that motivated you to come to convert? Don't you know that the Jewish people at the present time are anguished, suppressed, despised, and harassed, and hardships are frequently visited upon them? Really motivational stuff, right? What they're saying is, look, what benefit do you get from this? Why would you want this, right? We are in exile. We don't have anything to offer you that the outside world doesn't, right? There are things that being outside of us is more beneficial, right? You can go live as a good person. You don't have to become Jewish, right? You can just go do your own thing. So why would you go into something that's going to be hard when you can get just as much of a benefit from staying where you are? And furthermore, it might be a few steps back, right? If you decide to become Jewish. So if they say, in other words, if the person converting says, I know. So in other words, I know that things aren't that good for the Jewish people right now. If they say, I know, and although I am unworthy of joining the Jewish people and sharing in their sorrow. So, joining the Jewish people and sharing in their sorrow. In other words, it's about the peoplehood. It's about the belonging. To go back up here, right? Wherever you go, I will go. That's a question of fate. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. That's a question of what's going on right now. Your people shall be my people, right? I know, and although I am unworthy of joining the Jewish people and sharing in their sorrow, I nevertheless desire to do so. Then the court accepts him immediately to begin the conversion process. So in this case, what it means by conversion process is the mikveh. So that is the whole idea. It is about joining this peoplehood. Now, you join the peoplehood, but you don't just get like a secret decoder ring. You don't get a badge. You don't get a card. That's not how that works. So what else is involved? So we have this idea of behaving. So we have Isaiah. So he's one of the prophets of the Hebrew Bible. And he says this, let not the foreigner say, who has attached himself to Adonai, meaning God, who has attached himself to God, Adonai will keep me apart from his people. And let not the eunuch say, I am a withered tree. For thus said Adonai, as for the eunuchs who keep my Sabbaths, who have chosen what I desire and hold fast to my covenant, I will give them in my house and within my walls a monument and a better name than sons or daughters. I will give them an everlasting name which shall not perish. Okay, so let's sort of back this up a little bit. Let not the foreigner say who has attached himself to Adonai. So in other words, this is a person who is not Jewish, and they have attached themselves to God, meaning they worship God, right? They believe. They're believers, right? They don't happen to be Jewish, but they believe in Judaism. And then it says, let not the foreigner say, Adonai, the Jewish understanding of God, will keep me apart from his people. So the foreigner in this case should never say that God will not allow him, we'll say, in or her. Okay? The foreigner should never say that, should never say that they are not allowed in. The non-Jew should never feel like they won't be allowed to participate. And let not the eunuch say, I am a withered tree. Okay, so this is another idea. So we have a eunuch, so we have someone who has been given a disability in this case. As for the eunuchs who keep my Sabbath, who have chosen what I desire and hold fast to my covenant, I will give them within my walls a monument and a better name than our sons or daughters. So in other words, if you're a person who feels like you're not good enough, you don't have enough, you're the wrong kind of person, you are not fully capable, all these other things, don't say, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm a withered tree. That's what a withered tree is, right? It's damaged goods, right? It's someone who's not strong enough, not capable enough. And they're saying here, don't say that. I will give you a name, a monument, a place in this community higher than sons or daughters. I will give them an everlasting name which shall not perish. And this idea of names and names not going away or lineages, that kind of language in the ancient Near East is very powerful. And so I think this is an incredibly beautiful idea because what's being said here is something that you find in the Jewish community. You will have people who converted and they go to a synagogue and they know a little more than some born Jews do. So if we take the theology, if we take the sort of mythos out of it, you can just see that this happens all the time, right? That people who think that maybe they are going to be kept apart from the Jewish people by virtue of being, let's say from India and having been raised a Hindu, or being from France and being raised a Catholic, that they won't somehow be good enough or legitimate enough. And what God is saying here through Isaiah is, I will give you an everlasting name which shall not perish. It's a beautiful idea. So now we can get into believing. So this is a midrash. So this is a Jewish legend. So this is more of that extra canonical text. And this is a legend that is based on the Abraham and Sarah story. Lech Lecha is one of the Torah portions of the Torah. So the 5 books of Moses. And so here's what we have in this midrash. So Reish Lakish, who's this famous character in these midrashim and these legends, Reish Lakish says, the one who converts is more beloved than Israel when they stood at Mount Sinai. Wow, that's pretty big. Why? Because if they had not seen the thunder and lightning, the mountains trembling, and the noise of the trumpets, they would not have accepted the Torah. So in other words, what Reish Lakish is saying is those ancient Israelites, right, those Hebrews, those early Jews, if they hadn't seen all of the miracles, they wouldn't have taken on the Torah. But who is taking on the Torah? The convert, right? The foreigner, right? But this one, who did not see one of them, meaning not a single miracle, came to the Holy One and took upon themselves the yoke of heaven. Is there one of you more lovable than this one? So in other words, hey, all of you people who are the descendants of the Jewish people, right? Your ancestors, whether you believe this to be physically true or not, or historically true, nonetheless, it's the story, were present at Mount Sinai and saw these miracles and ate manna in the desert and, were only got there because God had 10 signs and wonders, right? In other words, the 10 plagues and the crossing of the Red Sea, right? Like, that's a lot to sell the Jewish people on in order to become sort of Torah observant, right? To go from being just a community to being a people, a religious people, right, with a missional approach to life, right? They had to go through all of that to accept the Torah. But the convert is someone who just said, I'm willing to take this all on. I don't need the evidence, right? And so what Reish Lakish is saying, is there anyone more lovable than this one? Meaning you, the person who is taking this class with me right now. So the smartest person I know is my wife. So she's a Rebbitzin, so I'm a rabbi, she's a Rebbitzin. And so I asked her, can you give me maybe 5 or 6 ideas for things that you would tell someone who's interested in converting to Judaism? And so here's what she gave me. So the first one, don't treat it like a master's degree. You don't need to know everything. And that's certainly true. There are people who 5 years later still haven't converted to Judaism, fully intending to, right? Fully intending to convert to Judaism, but they get so hung up in all of the details that they just never do. And so she says, don't treat it like a master's degree. You don't need to know everything. When you know, you know. This is not a solitary religion. You have to like other Jews and spending time with them. This can be hard because Judaism, being a religion that involves participating with people, we are somewhat in a post-participation age, right? We're in a time where people don't necessarily get together in the big groups that they used to. They tend to limit the amount of activity that they're involved in. But this is not a solitary religion. It's very hard to be Jewish by yourself. You have to like other Jews. You have to like being around Jewish people, right, in order to be Jewish. That's something you have to think about. It's more than just a religion. It's more like immigrating to another country than adopting a new religion. Yes, you are adopting a new religion. I am not saying otherwise. But there are other religions that you can join that aren't as fully immersive, right? So if you become a Christian, you are part of, activities and beliefs and things like that, but you don't necessarily have language and history and culture and foodways, right? You don't have, documentaries written about you or made about you, right? Necessarily, right? If you become a Buddhist, let's say, you have the Sangha, you have the community, right? You have the religious practices and the meditation sits and things like that. But you still are kind of living your life throughout the world. It is not like converting to Judaism where you are so fully immersed in this peoplehood concept, the ethno aspect of an ethno-religion. Don't think of it as all or nothing. So having said that, you aren't, having to do everything and not all at once. So if you're interested in keeping kosher, make that a gradual practice, right? If you think that maybe you'd like to go to the mikveh once a month, okay, well, go once when you convert, and then think about it from there. Obviously mentioned Hebrew, right? Do a little bit at a time. Synagogue every week. That's wonderful. Maybe you can or can't do that. Maybe once a month you host a Shabbat dinner, and then the rest of the time you go to the synagogue, or maybe you have other practices. But don't try to do it all at once. It's overwhelming. Gradually increase your practices and also adapt those practices too. And then finally, having said all of this about sort of, converting and joining a peoplehood and what that asks of you, don't become a different person. You don't have to adopt a new persona or ditch relationships, right? So there's this idea of sort of new convert syndrome. You get very excited about the fact that you're doing this thing and it's so meaningful to you and you want to share it with other people. And then you get to a point where, let's say you're on social media, you start looking at your social media and you realize it's all about becoming Jewish. And you actually start to maybe even feel like you're more connected to Jewish influencers on social media or Jewish news outlets than you are to your own friends and family. And that's a dangerous thing. That's a very dangerous thing. Don't ditch relationships just because you're in this new thing. It could very well be that your best friend is never going to understand why you became Jewish. They can still be your best friend, right? It could be that the people that you go to a bar with or a knitting club or a PTA are ambivalent about the fact that you're converting. It doesn't mean they have anything against it. It just doesn't really mean much to them. Great, wonderful. But that doesn't mean you have to harass them if they plan an event on a Jewish holiday and they just didn't realize it, right? You are not becoming a new person. You don't have to suddenly start using, Jewish slang. You don't have to suddenly start, adopting physical practices like wearing a black hat or things like that. If you want to wear, tzitzit, just tuck them under your shirt. No big deal. These mitzvahs can be done in a more private way. I am not saying that you have to dial back your Jewish practice in order to accommodate the world. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is be yourself. Just be a Jewish version of yourself. So if you have any questions, please let us know. The help desk is open to you. Of course, you have your mentor. Ask them. Maybe they'll agree. Maybe they'll disagree with some of this. We'd love to know. Thanks a lot for joining me, and I look forward to more times together in the future.